No, it's not selecting the right one. Hmm. Welcome. Welcome to the nap. Sorry about the start. We were having some connection issues. Not not very nice. All right, let's get on with it. Um, we are the nap, where we cover the no answer period, as we like to call it, the as opposed to the question period. If you're watching us on any of the platforms, Rumble, I'm looking over, don't seem to be streaming on Rumble yet. What is going on? There we go. Been having a lot of Rumble issues this week. Videos vanishing, thumbnails unable to be put up, and the 9 o'clock stream this morning at with Blazing Cat for Fridays recorded no video at all, even though I could see it live happening right in front of me. So I don't know what's going on with Rumble, but it has not been a good week for this account. Now, enough of that. Let's get into what is going on here in Canada. Like we do, we like to cover a lot of the far left half-wittery that has been insanely destroying this country, right? We cover this far left evil that has beset our land and the events that surround it. So let's listen to this.
Stories all have a happy ending. But I'm getting grieved as I'm, interviewing these people because almost every one of them, explains how they were completely despondent, how they were losing hope. Some say, listen, I would have killed myself. We've got this really interesting story from a lady who was working at Health Canada in Ottawa, very high up in the biologics department at the time, who was discounted. I didn't find a solution. I'm killing myself. Life and death stories. And what's grieving us is we understand there's so many more Canadians that are.
This is why I stopped shopping on Amazon, and you should too. Don't.
Sorry about that, folks.
are suffering in the medical system, not understanding that there's any hope. And they need to learn. Don't give up. The answer's out there.
Today's story hits every Canadian where it could help or harm. That's our health. And as the battleground for informed consent over the system's grip on our medical freedom rages on, so does Health Canada's war on natural health products. An advocate against this overreach is Sean Buckley from the Natural Health Products Protection Association, called NHPPA. He says that Health Canada is keeping people sick and silencing their stories through regulatory frameworks that crush the natural health product industry by treating them like the trillion-dollar pharmaceutical industry. Buckley is a constitutional lawyer fighting for protections in the natural health space that started with a health charter he drafted as early as 2008. And now he's taking that charter and a petition with 150,000 signatures on a cross-Canada road trip in a retro Volkswagen van, sharing stories of people whose lives were saved by natural remedies along the way. Here's what Sean had to say ahead of this tour.
Health Canada has a war on nutrients. So they've made it so our food supply isn't healthy, and yet we have to fight to protect our access to nutrients. And to solve that, we drafted the Charter of Health Freedom, which basically entrenches our health rights, takes the regulation out of Health Canada's hands, and forces a fair regulatory environment where we don't have to worry about losing things that we need. And when I say losing things that we need, Tamara, the other part of this is this health show that's online. Well, the purpose of it is to give Canadians an opportunity to share their health stories. Earlier today, I was interviewing a lady. She started crying. She, was hyperglycemic, and the doctor had put her on metformin, and literally it was killing her. She was nauseous. She was throwing up. She had huge diarrhea, distended stomach. She started crying during the interview because when I asked her, well, how are you coping with this? And she was literally saying, well, I would go and find a quiet place in the house and just weep. And, she comes across, she goes to a naturopathic doctor, she gets a herbal remedy, she becomes well, she's now just ecstatic. These are life and death things.
Armed with what Buckley says is the third largest petition in Canadian history, groups traveling from Victoria, British Columbia on one side and Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island on the other will begin their journey on October 4th, carrying that petition and charter into Ottawa on October 25th.
Everyone come. And we're going to present these petitions and the charter to an MP that is going to then, have them vetted with the clerk of petitions and then entered. So we're going to be driving across for 3 weeks across Canada. And not that maybe it'll take that long in a VW van, I don't know. But we're going to be stopping along the way and having in-person events. So, check out nhppa.org and look at our calendar. If you're anywhere along the route, from either the East Coast or the West Coast or Quebec City to Ottawa, please come to the in-person events. If you're not, we're going to be inviting people to do videos and participate as we go. We'll play your videos.
Part of this journey will also include video broadcasts, 8 hours or more per day, 4 days a week, mostly in English, but also some in French, which Buckley has coined the world's greatest health show because it does something that no other health show has done. He says this includes sharing forbidden knowledge.
We will let you go and view the rest of that video over at Rebel News. Tamara, like I said before, she is a national treasure. The amount of work that she has done since she has joined Rebel News 4 years ago. I know that Ezra recruited her during the COVIDity stupidity when she was in Coburg, as her father was being arrested for being in the water. Yes. So this is much more on the same path, isn't it? We know, and if you don't know, you should know that you are what you eat. Everything you put in your body is what you're putting in your body to replace parts that need to be replenished and to give you energy. It's really that simple. Occam's razor is usually right to the point. Usually the simplest answer is the right answer. If you put something toxic in your body, it has to come out. And it's not necessarily just going to come out through the other hole. It's sometimes going to get through your body and seep its way through. If you look at the ingredients in your food these days, it's a big reason why I had a garden, why I have had a garden for the past 3 years. If you look at your ingredients at processed food, anything that is packaged and pre-prepared for you, I suggest you start going through and finding out which ones are industrial byproducts and why they are being put in your foods. Why do I say this? Because these same products are being outlawed or have been outlawed in Europe because they're a little more far lefty out there when it comes to the food. In fact, food nutrition in Europe, aside from all their other social failings out there, has at least been something that they have been very, very adamant about. So that when you grow something healthy, it's actually healthy and it hasn't been genetically modified. And that is the other thing. Start getting yourself informed as to which foods actually have been exposed to chemicals that are playing there and which ones are not. And even some that are listed as not being exposed to chemicals are exposed one way or other. Now, on our training channel, I don't know if you've mentioned it before, on Bullying Cover Fridays or even on an app, where we know that they were spraying glyphosates out east once again, also known as Roundup, right, which ends up killing a lot of the fauna and the, well, fauna, that includes the bugs, the animals, or whatever, because they're all getting toxified. They're all getting this nerve agent put onto them. And of course, it's designed specifically also to kill certain broadleaf plants to leave other ones alone. So why is it when they use this substance, it doesn't kill the crops that they spray with it, right? It kills all the other weeds, but it doesn't kill the crops. That's because what they've done is they have genetically modified the crops to be resistant against this pesticide, this herbicide, this poison that they are putting that is killing all the other plants. So now you have a genetically modified plant that wasn't designed that way by nature, which means it does not provide the same nutrients. In fact, these genetically modified items that your body is not normally shouldn't be normally exposed to. Well, now those genetic modifications have been proven to be passed on for the people that eat them, right? Because these are modifications specific to the glyphosates, which means that the plant has glyphosates in it. It has a poison. That's the only reason it didn't die. It's because it's been genetically modified not to die when it's exposed to the pesticide. So it still has the pesticide. So even if you wash off the peel, it doesn't matter. It's inside. Even if you peel off the peel, it's inside. You need to get informed of what they are doing to your food supply. Everything that you eat is affecting you. And there are many things that you should be taking that could help you naturally just by eating normal food every day instead of having to take supplements. There are so many natural things that are being not discovered but rediscovered because they have been purposefully hidden by the industries that set up the entire social system of healthcare that we have, especially in North America. Now, healthcare systems are not the same all across the planet. In fact, if you go to Ecuador, you can get yourself some ivermectin really easily. They know what helps people live and be less of a burden on your healthcare system by feeding people unhealthy food that is making them sick and keeping them sick. That keeps driving big pharma. Now, I heard the similar things back when I was in my 20s and my 30s, and I really didn't know what to think, and I kind of discounted it. And even though I had an education in grade 13 biology, I really didn't give it much thought. But then again, I was kind of like spending a lot of my spare time not drinking water. But once I started paying more attention to life, and then I realized that certain things you put in your body just causes inflammation like crazy. And you cut those things out, well, your body will heal. They say if you quit smoking, 2 years, 2 years for all those cells that have been affected by the smoking damage, for them to slowly be replenished and replaced. Especially those capillary areas, right? That's the basic ones that you're really affecting. So imagine that's just smoking. Now imagine if you're constantly, every day, eating something or putting something in your body that is causing that inflammation. Well, as soon as you cut that out, the inflammation will start going down, but your body still needs to heal. It takes time. Think of it when you have a scrape or a cut. It doesn't heal right away, depending on the depth and the intensity of the of the injury. It could take a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, who knows how long. Well, that's the same kind of injuries that are happening inside your body. Sure, no fault of your own, but the help is there. Let's move on to our next video before we get to the question period today. This should be good.
Today. Mr. Minister, I just want to raise again this workplace culture with CBC that Ms. Thomas, I just want to get it on the record, if you don't mind. When you did meet with the new CEO of CBC, Marie-Philippe Boucher, you did not raise the workplace culture?
If you think it might rain later, then all you need is this bearskin heavy storm rain jacket.
Terribly sorry. If we had a YouTube account, we wouldn't have commercials.
Or the toxic atmosphere at CBC, or did you? Yes or no?
Madame Bouchard et moi avons parlé de plusieurs choses.
Madame Bouchard and I spoke about several things, including the importance for the public broadcaster of being aligned with Canadian values, of course, as well as the values being defended by the Canadian government.
You talk at all about the workplace culture that has all of a sudden percolated, if you don't mind me using that word, with the CBC recently?
Je pense que là-dessus, on va devoir s'entendre sur le fait qu'on ne s'entend pas. Moi, je ne partage pas votre opinion.
We have to agree to disagree. I don't agree that you can take a few isolated cases and generalize to the entire public broadcaster when it comes to the whole issue of the atmosphere at work and working conditions for.
Well, that's pretty rich coming from Guilbeault, the Hans Gruber of climate change. Really? We can't assume just from a few things. Well, apparently that's how you attack your opposition members all the time. You point to one thing or another, and then you smear them with the entire thing, right? In fact, you did that with vaccines, right? Even though people had been taking vaccines their entire life, as soon as they refused to take your experimental messenger RNA gene therapy rebranded as a vaccine and authorized as being safe and effective by the Public Health Agency, the same Public Health Agency that once they got the signals showing that people were dropping like flies and decided not to say anything because it might cause vaccine hesitancy, those same people, that kind of thing, where you called everyone else names and called them anti-vaxxers, wrapping them up all in the same blanket together, right? And now you're going to sit there and say, oh, I don't share that opinion. In fact, that is an old ploy by the Liberals that they use all the time. You might even see them employ this thing in Parliament, and you will see him try to employ, and they do this all the time, the Liberals, when they come into committee. They think that they can just use the same non-silly roundabout answers of, oh, I don't share that opinion, blah, blah. But that's not, committee is not Parliament, right? In committee, you can call him a liar. Oh, get all puffy about it and blah, blah, blah. But like, sorry, we're not in Parliament. I can call you anything I want, and I can point out exactly what you're doing. And that's the difference. And this is why they need to be called in a committee. And this is the only place they can be held accountable to answer questions, because outside of the office they won't, unless you send them a specific letter, unless they get something legal that they have to respond to, and then you will finally get a response of some kind. But even then, most of it might end up being blacked out, like all the SDTC documents, and of course a lot of the material that is missing that apparently he has been involved in absconding with some money. But of course we don't know, because they still refuse to hand over the documents that will prove their innocence. In fact, if it's going to prove your innocence, then why are you redacting the information and providing the documents? Very, very interesting. Let's listen to some more of the Hans Gruber of climate change tell us how his opinion matters more than the facts on the ground.
For thousands of employees at CBC. We can't take a few isolated examples and say that this is the way it is for everybody. I don't share your point of view. But where I do agree with you.
Oh, I mean, it was on every.
Médiatisé, mais ça ne
Yes,
fait
it's
pas.
got a lot of media coverage. But that doesn't mean that the situation is generalized across the public broadcaster. That's where I don't agree with you and your colleague. I don't share that point of view.
You share this, Minister, with the CBC. As you all know, the viewership is down, the revenue is down, and in fact, the trust is down. And the former CEO, when we had Ms. Tate here, actually agreed with the trust in CBC is down. The streaming platform subscriptions, we don't know where they are, but now your leader has promised another $150 million to CBC. How is this possible? I'll tell you what it is done in Western Canada. Okay, CKSA Lloydminster has served that community for 60 years. Stingray shut the station down because CBC's there now. And the same with CHAT Medicine Hat. 70 years in that community, television is gone. 70 years in Medicine Hat, gone. So while you say the public broadcaster is this and that, I want you to know the public broadcaster has crept in and has destroyed private media in this country. I gave you two examples here, 60 and 70 years. Your thoughts on that? How is this reasonable?
Nous en avons parlé tout à l'heure avec votre collègue.
We discussed this earlier with your colleague, Mr. Champoux. In Canada, and when I'm talking about traditional media, in Canada, as elsewhere, everywhere else in the world, or almost, is experiencing difficulties with the advent of the online platforms, with advertising budgets that have gone from local television and newspapers to the web giants.
All right, that's enough of that one. We don't even need to watch the rest of it. So it's obvious what's happening. We know that the government has been propping up the dying mainstream media. We used to talk about the dead tree media, the newspapers, and although they are still published, you can see how very thin they are. It was only 20 years ago when you could still get a rather thick weekend paper with the Sunday funnies and all that. But nowadays, it's nothing. There's barely enough to line a bird cage anymore. That is the shifting medium. That is the shifting view of people that are consuming their environment. But the liberals just can't let it go. They need to keep feeding a dying media because that is the last thing that they can control when it comes to the messaging. So a lot of people don't realize that in Canada, our news consumption, our consumption of media has been completely suppressed and oppressed by the liberals slowly and surely over the past 10 years. I didn't have time to get that other clip in. I wish I could find it. There is a actually I will find it while we're playing this. There's a musician who wants to promote his Canadian music in Canada, but he cannot because the government has certain words that you are not allowed to say in your music, like words like Trump. Yep, you cannot say. Well, so it was a person trying to do a freedom convoy song, right? So he was basically in a song saying things that happened, like people having been arrested and for the maybe the EA being illegally used, right? But all these things embarrass the government, so you're not allowed to do that. And if you put that in your song, what they do is they will go through all the mediums that are allowed to operate in Canada, and they will algorithmically suppress you. Yes, that's right. You won't get boosted, right? So if you're paying for ads, well, your ad will not get boosted on YouTube or wherever else it is you because you've put in forbidden words, right? And if these platforms do not suppress your content according to the authoritarian, draconian liberal party, right? Because they have to control the messaging and everything. If they don't do it, then they face fines. And they're already paying through the nose to the liberals to operate in Canada what used to be free, right? Where people actually used to go on there, like in Facebook, used to put on their news, used to promote their businesses and everything. And of course, the liberals came back in and they ruined everything, right? They had to get their fingers in everything. And they went to these digital carriers and ended up going after them and forcing them to give them money just to stay in Canada, follow these authoritarian rules of censorship just to operate. And then they take all that money and they give it to their preferred journalists. They're preferred media organizations that can't make it on their own. They can't get advertisers because people won't consume them. It's probably less than 3% of people even watching CBC, but yet they get the largest amount of money. It's they're getting more money than GDP of small countries, it seems like. And still, they can't keep their operations from acting like a clown show. But of course, they're representatives of the government. They are the state media. If you think the CBC is Canadian, it's not. It's the cultural, it's Marxist broadcasting system, the cultural Marxist broadcasting system. Anyway, so what did the Liberals do? They brought in legislation to ensure that only approved journalists could be recognized in Canada. Only approved journalists, only approved independent media can actually be trusted to give the lies of the government to the public. I don't think people realize how close we are to being like in North Korea. We are just steps away from being arrested just for saying simple words that may or may not offend somebody and being arrested and not being able to address whoever is accusing us, right? Bill C9 will allow for warrantless arrests. You don't need a warrant. And then you're hauled up before the judge, and he looks at the law and he says, "Yep, heard your words. You offended somebody." And you'd be like, "Well, I want to know who I offended." You're not entitled to find out who you offended, according to this new act. We can just arrest you and put you in jail. There you go, 5 years, off you go. You won't be putting any hurty words when you get back. And of course, even if they cut the sentence and bring them out, sure enough, they will put other penalties on them. It goes, "Oh, you're not allowed to go on social media. You're not allowed to do this." They will completely and why am I saying this? Because that's what they've been doing in the UK for the past couple of years and arresting an average of 12,000 citizens a year for hurty words and then silencing them. And if they try to say something, they arrest them again. I believe Katie Hopkins has just been arrested again, probably for saying something offensive that pissed somebody off in a Labour government. And that's all it takes now. If you just upset the Liberals whatsoever, especially embarrass them, they go after you nonstop. Look what they've done to Keenan Lexi. He did a story on a Liberal candidate who wanted to run out west. And they did their interviews of all the witnesses, of all the people, right? And they did a very good story and they put it out, and then that candidate had to be swapped out for somebody else because apparently, allegedly, he had a history of abuse. After the election, Elections Canada goes after Keane, charges him with election interference because he reported on something that had affected an election, let alone the fact that all the information was true and well vetted. But because they are an independent media organization, because he works for Juno News, they're immediately targets. Now, if you are an approved journalist in Canada, the approved journalism, and Ezra will talk about this. If you're an approved journalist in Canada, you can lie to the public and not face any fines because in 2019, the law was changed. Prior to 2019, if you published news in Canada, you are not allowed to lie. In fact, if you provided misinformation, disinformation, or misled the public, you could face fines and or jail, but that was taken away. Now, approved media in Canada can lie with impunity. There are no fines for misinformation, disinformation whatsoever, which is pretty handy for them because this was put into place before they started to lie about the safe and effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine that ended up requiring a massive failed vaccine injury support program, which we haven't heard much news of recently. Again, I wonder how all those vaccine sufferers and the families of the vaccine dead are doing, right? With the vaccine injury support program that the Liberals had to put in for the apparent safe and effective vaccine that the mainstream media pushed to fear porn nonstop. And the only place you could find any kind of information was through independent media. The same independent media that will continue to get crushed. Canada, we are so close to being North Korea. Let's listen to Ezra.
The subject matter is a journalism license that Justin Trudeau brought in several years ago. Rebel News applied for it. It's called the QCJO, Qualified Canadian Journalism Organization. It's basically a journalism license. You have to apply for the government. If you don't get it, they have the power to order social media platforms to downrank your discoverability.
My name is recognized across Canada, so let's get.
And apologies for not having a YouTube account to avoid listening to these commercials. I should have went to Rumble and watched it there.
It allows the government to order Facebook, YouTube, Google, etc. to make it so when people search for your news source, the licensed QCJO choices are boosted and the independent citizen journalists are throttled. That's why it's so dangerous. Anyways, I won't go into the QCJO right now. I want to talk about the hearing we just had. Rebel News had 2 lawyers. Government of Canada had 2 lawyers sitting at the front, but it ranged over the period of time up to 3 others in the back of the court on their side. On my side, it was just me. It was a huge courtroom, completely empty, other than the lawyers, 2 clerks, 3 judges. It was a 3-judge panel, and me. There was no civil liberties people there from all the traditional groups who claim to be for press freedom. There was no one there from the Canadian Association of Journalists. There was no one there from Canadian Journalists for Free Expression. No one there from Amnesty International, PEN Canada. Of course not, because they've all been co-opted. They've all taken the QCJO news license and the subsidy that comes with it. Rebel News doesn't want the subsidy. We just want the ability to do our jobs. But you see what that's done? That's neutered, that's nullified any independent spirit in the media. And it hasn't happened overnight. It's been a 10-year process. I think if you could go back in time 10 years and tell the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, the CBC, what has become of this journalism license, they would be shocked. But over the course of 10 years, they become more and more dependent on government cash and more obedient. It's just a handful of outliers like Rebel News. Anyway, so to the court, it was astonishing to hear some of the arguments from the government. One of the government lawyers said this is not journalism regulation or policing at all. It is not journalism regulation, she said. Well, of course it is. That's why we're here. We wouldn't care if it wasn't journalism regulation. There are literally regulations that are published. It just was very bizarre. What I learned today that maybe I didn't quite register is that there was a professional civil servant at the Canada Revenue Agency who approved our QCJO status. I actually don't think I knew that, but Trudeau's hand-picked committee of his journalist friends who are not staffers at the CRA, Trudeau just appointed a committee. I mean, he named his allies to it. They contradicted the CRA civil servant and made her change her report. Can you believe that? A government civil servant said, yeah, Rebel News passes the test, and then Trudeau's friend says, no, it doesn't. So then the lady in civil service says, oh, sorry, I'll ban them. The craziest thing is the reason why. In their first attempt at banning us, they said we were too opinionated. They actually said that, but they realized that that was not a grounds under law to ban us because opinion journalism is acceptable journalism. It's half of what the CBC and the Toronto Star does anyways. But they later said that what we did was not real news. They said that only 2% of what we do is real news. And I thought, how can they even say that? That doesn't make any sense. We don't do weather, we don't do sports, we don't do human interest stories. How could you possibly say? And we selected the audit period in question 3 weeks during the trucker convoy, where we did more journalism than we ever had in our lives. As you may know, in February of 2022, we had 400 million views and impressions. So certainly a lot of people around the world thought we were doing journalism. How can you, we were broadcasting almost 24 hours a day during the trucker convoy. How can you watch that 3 weeks of journalism and say, no, that's not journalism? We didn't figure it out until the very end of the hearing today. The government said, no, none of that was journalism. None of that counts, because at the end of some of those videos or on the website, we mentioned a crowdfunding campaign for the truckers. So the government said, yes, you did an enormous amount of journalism. They mentioned podcasts, documentaries, etc. But they said, because you supported the truckers and invited other people to support it, we're not calling that news. None of our coverage on the truckers counted.
See the complete hypocrisy of the government. right? Because if you look at a newspaper and you flip the pages, what are you going to see? Advertisement. You're going to open up a magazine, you're going to flip through the pages. What are you going to see? Advertisement. If you're going to watch mainstream media on cable TV, if that still exists, what are you going to see? Advertisement. If you're going to watch your mainstream media streaming on CommuTube, what are you going to see? Advertisements. Oh my goodness me. That's how they make the revenue. So apparently, trying to make revenue, and even in this case, mentioning that that there was a revenue option for the story that they were covering for the people that they were covering. That's grounds for not being journalism. These people are insane. They will do anything. But it doesn't matter anyway, right? Because they can just lie all they want because there's no accountability for them. The deck was purposefully stacked to destroy independent media and have the government fully control the minds and the hearts of Canadians by doing it the same way that fascists and communists have done it in the past, by full control, full government control of everything. Right, so there's been a small update here on the ostrich issue, and it's just as you would expect, right?
Hey folk, we're at the Edgewood, BC ostrich farm here. CFIA's in there doing their thing. Turns out that there's a bird here that's had a rope around its neck for the past 2 hours. They're trying to get him, and every time they go up to the bird, it's running away. Karen would have had it off in 2 minutes. Hang on a second.
Let Katie do it.
Oh. Damn.
Look at that retard walking around in a hazmat suit amongst healthy birds. People have been around
Why did
these
the birds run
birds
away? Look at this guy.
healthy
Help us help you.
for months, and then these guys show up and do their little
Every time he
kabuki
gets
theater.
close, the bird runs away. It's been 2 hours this guy been at it. You know, if one of the farmers went in there, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. They're gonna keep on walking around the whole thing, just try to find this bird. Such kind, considerate humans.
Oh, guys, they're not gonna like tranquilize her to get the rope off. Are
Unbelievable. Okay, we'll be back.
they? That's speculation.
They danced in the meadows, free and strong.
World Cup final. And in the starting lineup is Emily Totosi, who hails from our community in Westman. Emily and I grew up together attending Surrey School. In fact, I was one of the VPs when she was student council president. Now that's a few years ago, Madam Speaker. Now ranked 15th out of the best 50 rugby players in the world and consistently mentioned as the best hooker in the world. Yes, that's a real position in rugby. Emily takes in her second World Cup and receives her 41st cap playing for Canada tomorrow. Emily is living proof that when kids from small towns dream big and work hard, you can achieve big things. Surrey Sabres rugby coach Brian Yon and many community members are hosting a watch party at the Surrey School gym tomorrow. Doors open at 9:30, and I encourage all folks to come out and show your support. It's not every day that we have a local wearing the maple leaf on the world stage. Emily, we are so proud of you, and we know that you'll represent us well.
L'honorable député de Compton-Stanstead.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I rise today to recognize the achievements of Bishop's University in my riding of Compton-Stanstead, also the alma mater of two esteemed colleagues, the members for Victoria and Etobicoke Lakeshore. Despite its small size, with fewer than 3,000 students, the Gators brought home 5 championship titles last year. The men and women's golf team successfully competed at the nationals. The football, basketball, and women's hockey team triumphed in their conference championships, with women's hockey also claiming their first U Sport national title, Bishop's fourth overall. I'm proud to represent a riding with such a distinguished academic institution. As students and faculty gear up to celebrate homecoming this weekend, I would like to wish them continued success in their endeavors.
Now, I have mentioned Katie Hopkins, and this is a recent video. Now, Katie Hopkins, personality, and then of course now the woke have gone after her so much that, well, this is a good reminder of what was happening during the COVIDity stupidity, right? Where everyone was acting like crazy vaccine fascists, thinking that their silly, stupid little rules were gonna matter, right? These are all the same people that are still in a position of power, abusing citizens to this day. The same ones pushing all the same cultural Marxism, the diversity, equity, inclusion, so they can ensure their full authoritarian control by ensuring that they can call you a name or arrest you or whatever. Slowly but surely, they are gaining control of absolutely everything. But this is a good reminder of exactly the kind of future they want for us. And how about some sound there? Let's
I
try
said
that again.
yes.
Okay.
I was asked to do Celebrity Big Brother in Australia, and I was offered a huge sum of money, so I said yes. At the same time, Australia's locked down. Been locked down for 2 years. No one's allowed to leave. No one's allowed to come back. People can't go and visit their dead gran. People are stuck in the UK, can't get back to their own kids in their own country, but they're going to fly me in to do Celebrity Big Brother. And I'm like, righty, okay, yeah, sure. And I'm going to have to spend 15 days in lockdown, in quarantine, before I even get into the house, because I have to be, So over I go, and 2 police officers have to come on the plane to take me off the plane. And I have to be in a police van taken to my isolation prison. I am then escorted into the building. You have to be processed by a police team, taken up to the 26th floor by a member of the army and a member of the navy, and put in my quarantine room, prison. And they take the key. I'm not allowed a key. I'm not allowed to touch the front door of my room. I have to stay inside. When they bring my food, they're going to knock on the door. I have to wait 30 seconds. Then I'm allowed out. If I smell smoke, I'm being briefed on this. And the thing that really grips me as someone who, purposefully should be military, is someone had to brief that guy briefing me, for him to brief me with those bullshit. Someone had to stand there with a uniform and a straight face and say, 30 seconds, they're allowed to open the door. When they open the door, they're allowed to get their food. To get their food, they must have a mask. And I was like, I cannot deal with this level of bonkers. Day 2, 5 a.m, and I was like, and I lost my shit. And I went online, did a live, and then no one knew where I was. And I was like, I'm here in Sydney, and I'm in a country where no one's allowed to be, no one's allowed to come. People can't get to, and I frickin' went for it. And I gave it the whole, this is the tyranny of the people. You people need to rise up. I'm sitting in your country. I'm not vaccinated. I shouldn't be here. You are being pissed on. And I tell you, off I went back for a sleep. I woke up and Australia blew up. They said that they were cancelling my visa. I never even, they gave me the visa, and that I was now an illegal immigrant in the country. I never tried to get in. They brought me, and that I was going to be taken to an immigration deportation centre to be held. And then my electricity went off. Then they stopped delivering food. You're on your own, and they're taking away your light, your food. They're calling you an illegal. They're going to deport you. And it's like, holy, it got really, really dark.
Yeah, so seeing any parallels there to what they're doing with the hostages? Because for months, people have just been walking around, everything is fine. All the RCMP showed up, there were CFIA people bopping around and stuff, and there was nobody wearing hazmat suits. Then all of a sudden, as soon as they get a hold of the hostages, oh my God, all these ridiculous, disease regulations come in like they were doing to us as human beings. None of them made any sense whatsoever. right? And you could see the guy in the hazmat suit walking around. He's probably huffing and puffing in there, having a breathe-through mask, and he's all sweaty inside that plastic suit they got him wearing, and for nothing. And even the mask he's wearing, if the birds did actually have a virus, that did have a zoonotic ability to actually jump species, which they don't. It would still get past his mask because he's not wearing a self-contained breathing apparatus. The only thing that will keep a virus out is a pressurized breathing system to push the air out. That is the only thing that will ensure that you block a virus because there's no filter that people use to breathe through, and that includes the charcoal filters with gas masks that will stop a virus. They're just too small. You don't have the micron ability of an existing filter to do that. It's complete BS. Right. Well, are we still doing statements by members? Yes, we are. Let's listen to what she's saying.
Le député d'Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
Kwek, je me lève aujourd'hui pour souligner la journée nationale de la vérité et de la réconciliation. À l'image des Huskies de Rouyn-Noranda, qui déduit à nouveau cette année un match spécial à réconciliation avec les premiers peuples afin de rendre hommage aux enfants autochtones qui ont été perdus dans le système des pensionnats. Ce rendez-vous est organisé chez nous en collaboration avec l'organisme Minashin, qui signifie « ce qui est beau » et dont je suis particulièrement fier. Madame la Présidente, je nous invite aujourd'hui à nous engager envers un meilleur dialogue et une meilleure reconnaissance de l'autodétermination de chacun. Nous avions parcouru un certain chemin sur la route de la réconciliation, mais Ottawa a échoué avec ces 5. Il a échoué à consulter, à écouter et à obtenir un consentement préalable, libre et éclairé. Or, il est toujours temps de s'unir autour d'un grand cercle, de partager enfin nos valeurs humaines et environnementales et de co-construire les grands projets de notre territoire à travers le respect de véritables partenariats. Par la réconciliation, nous devons d'abord reconnaître encore davantage votre vérité. Ensuite, je nous souhaite de tout cœur l'ouverture nécessaire au dialogue durable.
L'honorable député de Canada.
Madam Speaker, Canada faces a pivotal moment in the global technology race with artificial intelligence
be remembered in this House and let her.
That was handy. I could just fast forward the stream here as it was getting a little behind, still stuck on state with my members, and we didn't have to listen to Jenna Suds. If anyone has had to listen to Jenna Suds at Parliament in the past, when she talks like this because she's acting like she's talking to a bunch of 4-year-olds when she talks in Parliament. I swear to God, go back and check any past episode from the prior sitting. That's exactly how she talks. So I would just sit there and go back and rewind, then I would actually put her on double speed because that's the only thing that made sense to try to listen to her.
October the 1st, we are making sure that those prohibited weapons are off our streets, but at the same time ensuring that law-abiding gun owners are able to get fair compensation for turning in or deactivating their prohibited weapons.
I see Gary is still pushing his lie. You were caught on tape.
J'invite le ministre à lire les journaux. Dans le Devoir ce matin, on disait, dans le lot de ceux qui faillissent à la tâche vient de s'illustrer magistralement le ministre de la Sécurité publique. Le bureau du procureur général de l'Ontario est cinglant. Le programme de rachat des armes à feu ne fait rien pour contrer les causes profondes de la violence par arme à feu dans nos communautés. Et c'est aussi, dans le fond, ce que pense lui-même le ministre de la Sécurité publique. Il l'a dit lui-même dans un enregistrement, Madame la Présidente. Après avoir été pris en flagrant délit d'avoir dit la vérité, ce qui est en soi un scandale pour un libéral, et avoir rien fait contre la hausse des crimes au pays, qu'attend le premier ministre pour le mettre à porte?
Le leader du gouvernement à la Chambre.
Madame la Présidente, le ministre de la Sécurité publique fait non seulement remplir notre engagement électoral, mais miroite le fait que depuis toujours, de ce côté-ci de la Chambre, on tente d'enlever la possibilité d'utiliser des armes d'assaut dans nos rues. On a eu des tragédies partout au Canada et les Canadiens sont incapables de supporter une possibilité d'accéder aux armes d'assaut. Les chasseurs nous disent qu'ils n'ont pas besoin de ça pour chasser. Ce qui caractérise aussi le débat, c'est que les conservateurs ont toujours été contre cela.
What a liar. What an absolute liar. There's no way that hunters told him that they wanted all those other weapons banned.
Sorry, in public he supports it, but in private he calls it a politically motivated scam that won't work. Talking out of both sides of your mouth should be a fireable offense, but it's worse. His job is to keep Canadians safe. Gun crime's up 130%, so he's failed, and he's pushing forward with a program he says won't actually work. What will it take for the Prime Minister to fire this minister?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, in order to have a serious conversation about crime, we need to have a serious conversation about guns, Madam Speaker. We brought forward, as of this week, launched a program in Cape Breton where we are compensating lawful gun owners who are willing to forgo their AR-15 and other harmful weapons, Madam Speaker. In addition to that, we're securing the border with $1.3 billion.
Freudian slip, he said harmful weapons
Bill
ban.
C2 right in front of the House, Madam Speaker, that the party opposite, if it's serious about gun crime, can support and pass through the House, Madam Speaker. We are looking...
Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Let's have a serious conversation about gun crime. The Toronto Police Association says 90% of guns used in gun crimes are illegal crimes. Are illegal guns. Are they going after that? No. They've come up with this $750 million politically motivated scam. Not my words, the Public Safety Minister's words. And you know what else he said? Don't ask me to explain the logic of it. So if we're going to have a real conversation, why aren't they going after the criminals, the 90% of illegal guns that are making our communities unsafe? His job is to make our communities safe. He's failing, and he's admitted it's a scam. Why won't...
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Here is what's clear, Madam Speaker. What is clear is that on this side of the House, we will put in place meaningful measures to make sure that assault rifles are not available to the people who have perpetrated mass killings and tragedies in this country. That is what Canadians
repeating
want.
their
That is what
same
Canadians
lying
ask for. That is what
message.
the Liberal Party has always stood for.
The Liberal Party has always stood for
stood
lying
for
to the Canadian
making
public.
these arms available across the country and doing nothing to ban them. Hunters tell us they don't need them to take down a deer.
Honourable Member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Madam Speaker, I want to commend the Minister of Public Safety for accidentally telling the truth with respect to the Liberal gun confiscation program. I fully agree taking legal firearms from trained, vetted, and licensed hunters, farmers, sport shooters, military members, veterans, and law enforcement is a waste of money. Out of the $742 million allocated for this gun grab, only $250 million is for compensating legal gun owners, while $500 million is allocated to the bureaucracy for this useless program. Why is the government focused on targeting law-abiding firearms owners instead of criminals?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, there are over 19,000 makes and models of guns that are available in Canada, legally available, that people can use for hunting and other sporting activities, Madam Speaker. What is important is that we're taking lethal weapons off our streets, weapons that have been used in mass killings, weapons that have really no place in Canada, including AR-15s that are directly linked to mass casualty events over the last 35 years, Madam Speaker.
Let's not mention that you just arbitrarily kick guns off a list and make them legal.
All Canadians, assault rifles have been banned in Canada since January 1st of 1978. The Liberals have since banned some semi-automatics, shotguns, and 22s based on the fact that they look scary, not on their functionality. This Liberal government would get unanimous support if they focused on criminals, repeat violent offenders, and cracking down on the stem of illegal guns coming across our border. Why is this government so focused on dividing Canadians and going after statistically the most law-abiding demographic in Canada, i.e. legal firearms owners?
Because they are communists trying to destroy Canada, and you can't take over
is that conservatives repeatedly
they have guns.
stand in the way of sensible measures to control the propagation of assault rifles in
What is this? He does this all the time with his hands, eh? This little thing here. You see that?
Of mass shootings, Polytechnique, the Quebec City Mosque, the tragic incidents in Nova Scotia. Madam Speaker, we're putting in place sensible gun control, and what's worse, hunters in his riding mine and every riding tell us they don't need a submachine gun to shoot a deer.
Honorable député de Gaspésie, les Îles-de-la-Madeleine, liste to gauche.
They didn't ban any
Madame
submachine
la
guns.
Présidente, le rôle d'un ministre,
The
c'est
guy
de faire
doesn't know what he's talking
converger
about.
les intérêts divergents pour trouver des solutions. Il a fait exactement le contraire dans le conflit du travail des postes. Il a lancé une bombe atomique dans les négociations en transformant Poste Canada sans consultation et sans même daigner en informer les travailleurs. Le résultat, c'est qu'on se retrouve aujourd'hui en pleine grève générale. Personne ne reçoit son courrier. Les PME doivent encore réinventer leurs opérations du jour au lendemain. Toute la population est abandonnée. Qu'est-ce que le ministre fait pour réparer son gâchis?
Bravo. L'honorable leader du gouvernement.
C'est en effet désolant que les deux parties n'ont pas pu arriver à une entente malgré des efforts intensifs de médiation qui se déroule depuis 2 ans. On a eu une enquête industrielle qui nous a fait une carte routière pour une réforme de la Société canadienne des postes qui va les remettre dans une situation de rentabilité et assurer des emplois à l'avenir à long terme. J'implore aux deux parties d'arriver à une entente, mais le gouvernement se doit de procéder. On ne peut plus dépenser des milliards de dollars dans les pertes de Poste Canada.
Le député de Gaspésie, les Îles-de-la-Madeleine, liste to gauche.
So there you go. The Liberals will ensure the Canada Post dies.
Canada parce qu'en région, chaque fois qu'Ottawa nous parle de modernisation, ça se traduit en coupe de services. L'annonce hier de la fin du moratoire sur la fermeture de bureaux de poste ruraux est reçue comme un abandon. Et la fin du service postal à domicile hors des grands centres, et particulièrement l'hiver, c'est une très mauvaise nouvelle pour les personnes à mobilité réduite. Qu'est-ce que le gouvernement va faire pour garantir aux Québécois des régions qu'ils
This
ne
is how
subiront
communists take
aucune
over.
perte de
They
service?
slowly break down everything in society so that they have to control everything. And mail is one of the last forms of communications that they're going to destroy.
Les régions autochtones, les régions rurales du Québec et de partout au Canada, c'est justement dans l'objectif de sauvegarder ces services-là que le ministre a agi. Les contribuables ne peuvent plus se payer des déficits d'1 milliard et plus à la Société canadienne des postes. On met la société sur une trajectoire durable et entre-temps, j'espère que les deux parties pourront arriver à une entente.
Bravo. L'honorable député de
They had 10 years to do something, and they did sweet effing.
Madame la Présidente, la Poste, c'est un service essentiel, notamment en région, où même la livraison de médicaments est en jeu. Or, aujourd'hui, personne ne reçoit son courrier parce que le ministre a provoqué une grève générale chez Poste Canada. En pleine négociation, alors que les deux parties, incluant les travailleurs, réfléchissaient à des solutions pour l'avenir des postes, Ottawa a tué les négociations en annonçant une réforme sans consultation. Si les conservateurs avaient fait ça, le ministre aurait été le premier à dénoncer. Qu'est-ce qu'il va faire aujourd'hui pour rétablir le dialogue?
Bravo.
Bravo. L'honorable leader du gouvernement chante.
Les médiateurs du service fédéral sont évidemment, bien sûr, disponibles pour assurer que les deux parties soient sur une trajectoire d'arriver et de conclure une entente. Mais je rappelle à ma collègue que les pertes de 1 milliard et plus à la Société canadienne des postes, ce n'est pas durable, ça ne peut pas être supporté à long terme. Ça bâtit beaucoup de maisons, ça, 1 milliard de dollars. Ça emploie beaucoup d'infirmières dans les régions éloignées également, Madame la Présidente. Donc, le gouvernement se doit d'agir pour assurer la durabilité de Poste Canada.
That's all a guy does, by the way, is
a
talking.
young father in Spencerville, and he has a trade, he has a job, and he has a young family, but he still has to count on a productive deer hunt this fall in order to provide a high-protein diet for his family. Now, why? The inflationary policies of this Liberal Prime Minister continue to drive the prices of food at the grocery store higher and higher. Why can't this Prime Minister see that his policies are making things worse for Canadians who are just trying to get by?
So they're going to remind us of the tax break, how they're providing free food and dental, and they got
my
elected.
colleagues. I respect him a lot, but
I don't think he's been seeing the evolution of the Canadian economy, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, I have some good news for the member. The Canadian economy is growing, Madam Speaker. I think he should be thanking the plan of this government, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we can grow the economy. We invest in the future. And on the budget in November 4th, I know the Conservatives are waiting for November 4th.
Can we have some order to listen to what the minister is saying? The Honourable Minister has 5 seconds to finish.
Madam Speaker, you know when it's good news, the Conservatives don't want to hear it, but Canadians sure want to hear about good news.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
We're not going to join the finance minister in patting himself on the back while millions of Canadians are lined up at food banks. Let's talk about the economy. GDP shrank in Q2. The finance minister should know that. But we haven't seen a budget from him, but we've seen all of the warning signals. And so has the parliamentary budget officer, who said that it's very alarming what's happening and that something is going to break. But it's already broken for Canadians. They can't afford to feed themselves, feed their families. They're worried about the cold coming and not being able to heat their homes. It's the policies of this Liberal Prime Minister that are vaporizing any supposed savings that they're going to have from tax cuts. Why won't they?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I know the Conservatives are eager to see the budget and hopefully vote for it because, Madam Speaker, indeed, we need to change course in this country. We need to spend less so we can invest more, Madam Speaker. That's what we're proposing to Canadians, generational investment in our future, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we build the most resilient economy in the G7, that we build jobs across this country, Madam Speaker, that we build the future that our children are wanting for this nation, Madam Speaker. The Conservatives should be rejoicing, Madam Speaker, that they have a government on this side that thinks about all Canadians and will grow this economy.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
That man doesn't care that he's destroyed people's lives for the past 10 years.
Because prices are skyrocketing, food banks are overwhelmed, and families are skipping meals. Meanwhile, the parliamentary budget officer called this government's finances, quote, shocking, quote, unsustainable, and warned, quote, something is going to break. Every dollar this Liberal Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. When will this Prime Minister stop his money printing deficits that drive inflation and admit that his broken promises have left Canadians hungry?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I don't know what the Conservatives are reading or listening, but they should be listening to the good news that we have. The economy grew in July, Madam Speaker. They should be rejoicing. I'm sure they're going to put that in their householders to tell their constituents that the plan of this Liberal government is working, Madam Speaker. And I'm sure they're going to talk about the November 4th budget, Madam Speaker. I can even send them some great infographics to inform their constituents. We lowered tax for Canadians. We made sure we removed GST for first-time home buyer. We removed the carbon tax, Madam Speaker. There's so many good news they can put in the householder. I'm going to...
The Honourable Member for Vaughan.
There was a small growth over the last month, but overall, the economy's down 16%. He's a complete liar again.
The parliamentary budget officer said, and I quote, as anyone who's managed the household budget knows, at the end of the month, when you don't have enough money to pay your bills, something is going to break. Well, let me tell you what's breaking. It's the morale of families who are going hungry. Beef up 33%, soup up 26%, grapes up 24%, and a projected 4 million visits to Toronto food banks. The Prime Minister claimed to be an economic expert, yet his broken promises had doubled the deficit and driven up food prices. When will he admit his fiscal failures are starving families of hope?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the economy is growing, and we saw the last numbers, the GDP growing in July, and meanwhile interest rates are being lowered.
With an overall drop of the entire year, you lying little skirt.
Conservative voters agree with it. We cut taxes on the middle class. We were able
There it
to
is.
cut taxes
We voted
on
in. You got to listen to us.
buyers, and we also cut the carbon tax. So since so many conservative voters are in favor, and so many, of course, of voters in general, please just support the government's agenda. Thank you.
Honourable Member
They
for
lie like a
Newmarket,
rug
Aurora.
every day.
The parliamentary budget officer called our finances, quote, very alarming, shocking, unsustainable. He warned, quote, if you don't change, something will break. And it already has. Every dollar this Liberal Prime Minister spends is coming straight out of Canadians' pockets. wrecking our finances and driving up the cost of food. He said he would be judged by the grocery prices. Well, Canadians are being crushed at the checkout. Will this Prime Minister end patting himself in the back and end his reckless spending by doubling the deficit, or will he keep punishing families for his failed...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the members opposite are quick to point to government spending as a cause of food inflation, but the Bank of Canada cut the interest rates last week because they actually understand economics. We are focused on affordability every day. That's why we cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. That's why we are massively increasing the supply of homes. And that's why we're building major projects that are going to create tens of thousands of good jobs for Canadians. Canadians voted for solutions, Mr. Speaker.
Are you sick and tired of the Liberals continually lying and repeating the same lies and non-answers over and over again in Parliament? Send them a letter. Send your MP a letter and tell them you're done with their bullshit. That's the only way they listen.
C'est rendu ridicule, un simple paquet de viande, 55 $ le kilo. Mais qui peut se permettre ça? Il n'est pas le seul. Le directeur parlementaire du budget disait hier la situation est alarmante et insoutenable. Est-ce que le gouvernement libéral va s'aligner avec les conservateurs et permettre aux Canadiens de se nourrir à juste prix?
No, they think everything is rosy.
J'ai des nouvelles pour mon collègue. S'il y a une chose qu'on fera jamais, c'est s'aligner sur les conservateurs. Ça, je peux le dire. Et il peut même l'annoncer à tous ses collègues, Madame la Présidente. Mais une chose qu'on va faire, c'est toujours être là pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Madame la Présidente, j'espère qu'il va répondre à celui qui a envoyé ça. La première chose qu'on a faite, c'était de réduire l'impôt, Madame la Présidente. 22 millions de Canadiens et Canadiennes payent moins d'impôts, Madame la Présidente. J'espère qu'il va lui répondre que ce gouvernement-là sera toujours là pour les familles, toujours là pour les travailleurs, toujours là pour l'industrie. Madame la Présidente, ensemble, on va bâtir l'économie la plus résiliente du G7.
See how he rudely points his finger as well?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez, un des piliers d'une longue vie et en santé, c'est une bonne nutrition. Mais dans les dernières années, se nourrir correctement, c'est rendu hors de prix. 40 d'augmentation sur le prix de la nourriture dans les 10 dernières années de ce gouvernement inflationniste libéral. Si on parle de fruits et légumes, c'est rendu complètement un luxe. Puis si on parle d'acheter des bonnes protéines, écoutez, le budget vient d'exploser. Est-ce que le gouvernement libéral réalise que de monter les prix alimentaires comme ça nuit à la santé des Canadiens?
They don't care. They're not going to answer regarding the health.
Le gouvernement comprend qu'on doit réduire les impôts et les impôts des Canadiens de la classe moyenne pour qu'ils puissent justement avoir accès à une bonne nutrition, comme le mentionnait mon collègue. Alors, dans les circonstances, on a réduit les impôts sur 22 millions de Canadiens. On a été capable aussi de réduire la taxe pour ceux qui veulent s'acheter une première maison.
That's a maximum of $40 a month that a person will get from this tax cut if they're paying the maximum tax level, which means most of the people that can't afford the food are not going to get much of this money back anyway. And how much is $40 really going to feed you in a month?
Madame la Présidente, il faut encore parler de la gouverneure générale. Tenez-vous bien, là. Elle a payé plus que 52 000 $ pour des cours de français depuis sa nomination. 52 000 $ de nos taxes et impôts. Puis vous savez que ça, là, c'est plus que le salaire moyen des Québécois après impôts. Puis après ça, elle parle toujours pas un mot de français, Madame la Présidente. On va se le dire, là, entre francophones, là. Ça coûte cher de faire rire de nous autres. Est-ce que les libéraux comprennent maintenant pourquoi il ne faut plus jamais nommer des unilingues anglais à des postes bilingues?
Bravo. L'honorable ministre.
Madame la Présidente, la gouverneure générale joue un rôle très important dans notre démocratie. Et elle essaie d'apprendre une troisième langue. Elle en possède déjà deux. Moi, je pense qu'on devrait l'encourager plutôt que d'essayer de la décourager. Je pense que c'est admirable qu'elle cherche à améliorer son français. Et son français s'améliore, Madame la Présidente. Ce que le député d'en face a dit est faux. Moi, je lui ai déjà parlé et on parle en français. C'est pas un français qui est parfait, mais elle travaille là-dessus et pour ça, on devrait la saluer. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Honorable député de Pierre-Boucher, les Patriotes Verchères.
À 52 000 $, ça coûte cher du mot, Madame la Présidente. Les 52 000 $ de cours de français de la gouverneure générale rappellent que l'an dernier seulement, la monarchie, là, ça nous a coûté, tenez-vous bien, 71 millions. Imaginez tout ce qu'on pourrait faire de mieux avec 71 millions de $. Par exemple, aujourd'hui, tout le monde parle de la grève postale et de la réduction des services à la population. Mais le gouvernement ne pense pas que 71 millions de $ pour donner du courrier à nos aînés, ça serait pas mieux investi que des babioles royales?
Oui.
L'honorable ministre de l'identité canadienne.
Madame la Présidente, je pense qu'on a un bon exemple de pourquoi le Bloc québécois ne sera jamais au pouvoir. Le déficit cumulé de Post Canada au cours des dernières années, c'est 4 milliards de dollars, Madame la Présidente. Alors, 71 millions sur 4 milliards, ça ne fait pas une grosse différence. C'est important dans notre démocratie d'avoir une chef d'État qui est notre gouverneur général. Ça fait partie de notre démocratie depuis le tout début et nous allons continuer de supporter notre démocratie. Ça serait le fun que le Bloc québécois embarque avec nous autres.
So there you go. The bearded freak
After 10 years
supports
of this Liberal
spending
government,
money
Canadians can't
uselessly.
afford to eat because of Liberal tax hikes on food. Their food inflation tax is fueled by money printing deficits, the industrial carbon tax on fertilizer and farm equipment, their second carbon tax hidden as a fuel standard, and a plastics ban. And here are the consequences. Chicken up 11%, soup up 26%, white sugar up 20%, and beef up 33%, with overall food prices rising 48% faster in Canada than they are in the U.S. since this Prime Minister took office. Every dollar these Liberals spend comes out of the pockets of hard-working Canadian families. When will they stop taxing?
Honorable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, food prices have increased, and that's why we are taking concrete action to lower costs for Canadians. We've cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We have 3.6 million Canadians who have dental coverage now, and we've established a national school food
20% of which
program
get
for over
billed because they said
400,000
they're not
kids across
covered.
the country. I met with the Canadian Teachers Federation, who says this program is so successful, it is their #1 priority to make
Yes,
it
let's
permanent.
celebrate
Why
you
won't
destroying the
Conservatives get on
economy so
board?
that parents can't feed their own kids. You loser.
Samaritan House Ministries Food Bank in Brandon is Manitoba's second largest, and under these Liberals is distributing between 60 and 80 food hampers a day. For context, that's 15,529 hampers by the end of August in a city of only 55,000 people. The Prime Minister once said Canadians would judge him by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Mr. Speaker, for families in the Wheat City, the verdict is in, and they're lined up at the food bank. Liberals have a chance to admit their mistakes and reverse course by voting for our Conservative motion to end their taxes on food. Will they do so?
We tried to warn you, Canada, that the Liberals want to kill you, and now they're slowly starving you to death.
Who know about food security, they talk about the things that are going to make a difference for families. Things like supporting families through the Canada Child Benefit. They recommend we feed kids in school with the National Food School Program. And they recommend that we build affordable housing because that's the #1 driver of costs for Canadians. These are things that we are doing. They are part of our plan. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? These are all things that the Conservatives have voted against.
I'm going to remind the honourable members that I'm a woman, and this is Madam Speaker time, or Speaker. The honourable member for Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Madam Speaker, what grade should we apply to the following statements? The average family of four is expected to spend over $800 more for food this year. 16% of Canadians fear that they won't be able to afford groceries in 6 months. Poverty and food insecurity have risen 40% in the last 2 years. And saddest of all, 2 million visits to the food bank in 2023, 4 million visits expected this year. So since the Prime Minister is said to be judged by the cost of groceries, how does it feel to flunk his own final exam, the one he himself wrote?
And they'll come back again, the lunch thing, the tax break, we were elected, you people are evil because you vote against everything, we're going to give you free houses.
Increased benefits for seniors, a lower tax rate for every single income tax.
Oh yeah, don't forget the dental stuff that failed because 70% of the people can't get coverage under it and get a bill in the mail.
Every single one resisted and voted against by
It's because
the
they're all
Conservative
failures.
Party. I would urge that member to speak to his whip to be able to stand up and support these people next time it comes to a vote.
Support failure?
Let me
Never.
explain taxes to the people across the way. The consumer-facing carbon tax was designed to raise the price and discourage use. Why don't they understand that when they apply 4 more taxes to food, that prices rise? They've applied the inflation tax from the deficit-inducing margins, the industrial buried carbon tax. What else have they done? They've added a clean second carbon tax disguised as a fuel standard and a fuel packaging tax disguised as a plastics ban. That's why food prices are rising. Does that not deserve an F grade?
The honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the things that this government is doing to actually make life more affordable for Canadians.
That's why we call it the no answer
I want
period.
to talk about Maya in my riding, who wrote me a letter this week. She said that she moved back to Toronto to be closer to family, which meant leaving a corporate job and its benefits behind. She was particularly concerned about how to manage her expenses around dental and prescription costs. She applied for the dental care plan, and it has been such a relief to no longer worry about dental coverage. Thank you for advocating for affordable.
Oh, she's part of the 28.4% who won't get a bill in the mail after you see a dentist?
Honourable member for Bow River.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister said Canadians should judge him by the price of groceries. Well, Madam Speaker, the verdict is in, and this Liberal government is guilty. In Vulcan, the local food bank is overwhelmed. Hampers have doubled year over year. Families are driving half an hour at least just to pick up food, and the food bank is spending thousands on gas cards just so people can afford the trip. Families are skipping meals, and the Liberals are skipping accountability. Taxes on fertilizer and farm equipment stress the food chain and raise prices in the store. Will the Prime Minister scrap his industrial...
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, all the Canadians that are watching TV this morning at QP will judge the Conservative for what they fought against, Madam Speaker. They would be slightly more credible if they didn't vote against pharmacare. They would be slightly more credible if they didn't fight against childcare. They might be credible from time to time if they didn't vote against dental care, Madam Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against providing support to Canadians, Madam Speaker. The Canadians that are watching at home this morning don't understand, but they know one thing, that this Liberal government is always going to fight for them and their families.
That man is nothing but an evil albino Kermit the Frog lying through his
this government with a clear
lips.
mandate to build a stronger and more prosperous Canada, and one powerful way to do that is to expand our access to international markets. Yesterday, Canada signed an historic agreement with Indonesia, the largest economy in Southeast Asia. Would the Minister of International...
Yes, let's talk about Indonesia, right? Who's complete, so they're across a great pond. They do less than 1% of trade with Canada, so they'll never displace anything else that we do.
Tireless work in our community, Mr. Speaker. Game-changing announcement. Canada, Indonesia signed a free trade agreement, a $2 trillion economy, a huge market for Canadian goods.
It might be a $2 trillion economy, but our trade with them is just over $1 billion. Our trade with the U.S., $44 trillion, is it? And they think this is something to celebrate because they've failed with U.S. trade.
Madam Speaker, since 2015, food inflation has soared 40%, part of a cost of living crisis that has left millions of Canadians struggling to afford housing, transportation, and groceries for their families. In fact, many Canadians have become so desperate, they are forced to rely on food banks each and every week just to be able to afford their rent and to continue to survive. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister said Canadians would judge him by the cost at the grocery store. Well, prices are still increasing, so what exactly is the government's plan?
Their plan will be to give you no answers and repeat the same thing they did before.
La question, c'est quoi le plan du gouvernement? Le plan du gouvernement, c'est clair, c'est de protéger, de créer des emplois et faire en sorte d'investir dans des grands projets nationaux qui vont avoir des retombées économiques partout à travers le pays, incluant dans la circonscription de mon collègue. Parce que ce que les Canadiens veulent de leur gouvernement, alors qu'il y a des tensions commerciales un peu partout à travers le monde, c'est qu'on ait un plan, qu'on le suive et que ce plan-là ait des retombées, et c'est exactement ce qu'on fait. Merci.
There you go, there's your answer. They have a plan, and they are not
Madam
deviating.
Speaker, prices are still increasing, and I wonder why. Inflationary deficits, money printing, taxes on businesses and on fuel, all Liberal policies that have turbocharged inflation over the past decade and that remain in place to this day. Now, the Prime Minister likes to pretend that this is a brand new government, but so far, Madam Speaker, it's just the same old Liberal policies. If they really want to show Canadians they've changed, why not steal another Conservative idea and end the taxes on fuel and on food?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, let me tell you about the impact of some of those Liberal policies. Here's a fun fact for a Friday. Since the leader of the opposition was Minister of Employment and Social Development, we've Madam Speaker, since the Leader of the Opposition was the Minister of Employment and Social Development, those Liberal policies that the member opposite refers to have reduced seniors' poverty by 30% and reduced child poverty by 38%.
Is that because most of the seniors have died off and your figures on child poverty are a lie?
Benefit by $345. That's over $8,000 for support for every child.
The honourable member for Edmonton.
The very fact that there are so many people going to the food banks and they're skipping meals to feed their kids, this is a lie.
Crisis. Canadians cannot afford to buy groceries or enough of it anymore, choosing less nutritious food and eating less quantity and in quality. Since Liberals took power, groceries soared by 40%. The Prime Minister can do something. Stop taxing food so Canadians can eat. Will he do it?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Madam Speaker, I would really like to clarify some of the misinformation that we're getting from the other side in this moment. So when they're talking about clean fuel regulations, which they refer to as a tax, let me quote to them. The regulations are not a tax, but a technology-enabling regulation. This supports investments in emissions reduction technologies. Who wrote that? The Canola Digest. We're going to stand
Our
with
tax
our
is not a
farmers. We're gonna
tax.
stand
We
with
called it
Canadians
something
to build
else.
for the
You
future.
can't call
They're
it a
trying to bring us
tax.
back into the past.
And you see, they don't care that people are starving.
Very creative in bringing more taxes on Canadians. Here's why. Beef up 33%, tuna can up 19%, potatoes up by 16%, pork up by 14%, vegetables up by 13%, oranges up by 12%, and chicken up by 11%. How many food banks need to come in Edmonton before this Prime Minister cut taxes on food for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, from the other side, you would think that pollution has no cost. But if we're talking about expenses of it, look
Okay,
at
so
the
anti-human
insurable
policies
losses
that
in
make
Calgary
people
after
starve to
hailstorm.
death are
In a
more
single
important.
hour, $3 billion in costs. That doesn't even include the uninsured costs that came from that event. We're going to keep fighting climate change. We're going to keep supporting Canadians.
So they're going to keep fighting climate change to starve you to death.
They're trying to drag us back into the past.
You're starving people to death with your policies.
Madam Speaker, this government is embarking on a billion-dollar scam to confiscate Canadian hunting firearms. In a recording, the Minister of Public Safety admits that he can't explain the logic behind this program and that police don't even have the resources to carry it out. Public safety is this minister's #1 job. Meanwhile, violent crime remains at all-time highs. It's reckless to go after law-abiding hunters and not the criminals using smuggled firearms to terrorize our streets. So when will this Prime Minister renounce this absurd scam and fire this minister?
I don't know why those MPs don't just call out the Liberals for the communists that they are.
19,000 legal firearms that could be used for hunting and farming, Madam Speaker.
Yes, until you
We have
decide to make those
prohibited
illegal too and then come and
firearms,
confiscate those as
lethal
well, like you've
firearms
been
such
doing
as
continually.
AR-15s that are used for mass casualty events, Madam Speaker.
Apologise to interrupt the Honourable Minister. The Honourable Member for Vernon Lake Country, Monashee, will be warned one time because it is very disruptive to hear those comments all the time. The Honourable Minister.
Well, it's very disruptive to hear nothing but lies and excuses from the Liberals all the
On
time.
this side of the House, we believe in the safety and security of Canadians and to make sure that lethal weapons are off our streets. On the
Especially the
opposite side,
ones that
Madam
are
Speaker,
locked in
they're
safes
about-
and held by
they're
legal
about
gun
bringing
owners.
forward
Hmm?
American-style gun laws, essentially enabling AR.
Honourable Member for Parkland.
Well, Madam Speaker, this government is not seizing any assault weapons because law-abiding Canadians don't own any. Ukraine was very excited to hear that this government was finally sending them some weapons of war, but they were very surprised to just receive the Cabela's Christmas catalog. Not only are these Liberals incinerating billions of dollars to go after law-abiding hunters, they're also embarrassing us by trying to send gopher hunting guns to Ukrainians risking their lives on the front lines. This is a fiasco. When will this Prime Minister make this minister resign?
Hear, hear.
It's about time they finally say something about the guns, different types.
One thing, we will never refuse a direct request from the government of Ukraine like we had for free trade arrangements with Ukraine and have it voted against.
Oh, we
by
know.
Conservatives. That
We know you've been sending them billions and billions while our citizens starve.
Comes, Madam Speaker, when you ask them, what specific gun measures would you put in place over there? Canadians are demanding sensible restrictions on assault firearms that cause mass tragedies. We have a response to that. What is theirs?
The honourable
Canadians are not. You are. A very small group of far-left
In
retards
private,
like
the
you.
minister told us the truth. In public, he said his words were misunderstood and mischaracterized. Well, let me translate for him. Quote, if I were to redo this from scratch, I would have taken a different approach. Translation, the minister doesn't believe in his plan. Quote, this is a mandate I was given just to put an end to this and move on. Translation, it's about politics, not public safety. Quote, don't ask me to explain the logic to you on this. Translation, this plan won't work. Minister, Madam Speaker, Canadians don't have confidence in this minister. How long will the Prime Minister stand behind him?
Minister of Public Safety.
Probably a good thing that member opposite is not a translator, Madam Speaker. Let me be very clear. Right now, we brought forward a pilot program in Nova Scotia to ensure that the systems we put in place as part of the compensation program works. The program will last for about 5 to 7 weeks, Madam Speaker. We will expand it nationwide across Canada, where all Canadians, all law-abiding Canadians can seek compensation for prohibited firearms, Madam Speaker.
Law-abiding, right? You're not going after criminals. Law-abiding citizens. You're going after law-abiding citizens.
To translate liberal hypocrisy. But let me tell you what their plan has led to. A crime problem, a gun problem, a leaky border problem, and an illegal gun problem. And you know what that has led to? A Canadians don't feel safe problem. And that's the minister's #1 job, keep Canadians safe. But instead of that, and instead of hiring border officers in the RCMP, he's wasting $750 million on a program he knows won't work. It is the responsibility of every leader to accept the consequence of their actions, however heavy they may be. Will the Prime Minister do that today and fire this minister?
Will Leader of the Government in the House.
Once again, Madam Speaker, we have a perfect example of the Conservatives refusing to offer up a single common-sense proposal.
Okay, that guy is a bald-faced liar every time he stands up because obviously they do have a complete plan. They had a complete plan during the last election, parts of which you stole, you lying bugger.
In the street. Sense, restrictions on the ability to possess an assault rifle. Hunters don't want them, hunters don't need them. Hunting rifles are preserved, but assault rifles...
Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety got caught on tape admitting that the Liberals' gun buyback is a $750 million scam, all about gaining votes for the Liberals and nothing to do with public safety. The minister even counseled his tenant to break the law and keep his now illegal firearm. Given the minister's complete lack of confidence in his own $750 million scheme, will he do what is right and save his reputation and resign?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, in addition to the compensation program pilot that we launched this week in Nova Scotia, we have invested $1.3 billion at our borders. We brought forward Bill C-2, which is in front of the House right now, Madam Speaker, which could be passed. With the support of the opposition, we can pass it today to ensure our borders are stronger so that we can keep illegal firearms off our streets. We also will be hiring 1,000 new CBSA and RCMP officers, Madam Speaker, and we will be making criminal justice reform. It's a culmination of efforts on this side of the House that will ensure the safety and security of Canadians.
L'honorable député de Rivière-des-Mille-Îles.
Madame la Présidente, nos industries stratégiques sont à la croisée des chemins. Avec l'imposition des tarifs par nos voisins du Sud, le Canada est prêt à jeter les bases d'une nouvelle ère industrielle. La ministre de l'Industrie peut-elle dire à la Chambre comment le Fonds de réponse stratégique aidera nos industries stratégiques à s'adapter, à se réorienter, à se diversifier afin de continuer à bâtir l'économie la plus forte du G7? C'est pas oui.
Ministre de l'Industrie.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous savons que les tensions commerciales avec les États-Unis ont des impacts sur nos entreprises et sur nos travailleurs. Et tout au long de l'été, j'ai été à leur rencontre, que ce soit à Sault-Sainte-Marie, à Hamilton, au Saguenay ou encore à Bécancour. Et ensemble, on a trouvé des solutions, comme le fonds de réponse stratégique de 5 milliards de dollars, ainsi que du soutien pour pour DEC et toutes les agences de développement économique régional pour 1 milliard.
You know, liberals are always so happy to brag about all the money they're spending. We're investing, we're spending, we're standing up for Canadians, spend, invest, invest, invest.
Madam Speaker, when Highway 97 shuts down due to landslides, wildfires, or serious accidents, Okanagan residents, including cancer patients and essential workers, are stranded. Many are forced onto dangerous, poorly marked forest roads like the FSR 201. The Harper-Campbell government's successful four-laning between Summerland and Peachland now requires $24 million in stabilization work. As a funding partner, the federal government has a clear obligation to contribute a share. Will the federal government commit to half the cost so the province can stabilize the corridor and upgrade the FSR 201, giving Okanagan motorists a safe, reliable alternative to Highway 97?
After all, if we can send billions overseas, we sure can fix our roads, right?
Is committed to working with provinces to ensure that Canadian residents are safe. We look forward to ongoing discussions in this regard and continuing so that we can find a solution that works for everyone.
That was a no. We're looking forward to ongoing discussion. That's a no.
Save lives here at home. But now we learn a foreign drug maker named Grifols is profiting off plasma donated through Canadian Blood Services without donors knowing. Canadian Blood Services promised that none of the plasma collected from Canadians would be used in products sold offshore. That promise has been broken. Does the Prime Minister agree that plasma donated through Canadian Blood Services should stay in Canada? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable colleague opposite for his question. Canadian Blood Services is responsible for managing Canada Blood System outside of Quebec at arm's length, and it operates on behalf of the provinces and territories. As Canadian Blood Services moves forward in its agreement with Grifols, we would strongly recommend and encourage it to follow the promises made when it signed the contract in 2022 to ensure the blood products are manufactured exclusively for Canadian patients and to establish the in-Canada supply chain necessary to produce them.
So, again, that's a no. We strongly recommend, but that's a no.
Grifols, a foreign company, is making money off their blood donations without their knowledge. But the Prime Minister isn't outraged, and we know why. That's because Brookfield has been aggressively working to buy Grifols over the last year, including while the Prime Minister was chair of Brookfield. Canadian blood donations should save lives in Canada, not line the pockets of foreign companies or the Prime Minister. If Brookfield buys Grifols, how much money will the Prime Minister make?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, as I had mentioned, Canada Blood Services is responsible for managing Canada Blood System outside of Quebec at arm's length, and it operates on behalf of the provinces and territory. As Canadian Blood Services moves forward in this agreement with Grifols, we would strongly encourage it to follow the promises made when it signed the contract in 2022. Thank you.
That's the old newbie liberal trick. Just repeat the same answer.
Madame la Présidente, ma question s'adresse à la secrétaire parlementaire du ministère du Logement et de l'Infrastructure. Dans mon comté Bourassa, comme ailleurs au Canada, les citoyens et citoyennes veulent des logements abordables, des logements accessibles. Peut-elle informer la Chambre comment son ministère collabore avec les parties prenantes locales, notamment les municipalités, les OBNL et les organismes locaux et les organismes communautaires, pour offrir des solutions concrètes en matière de logement?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Madame la Présidente, merci à mon collègue pour la question. Les Canadiens nous ont demandé d'agir. C'est pourquoi nous avons lancé Maison Canada pour répondre aux besoins de logement partout au pays. Le programme collabore avec les provinces, réduit les formalités et aide les petites communautés à construire plus vite. Nous travaillons.
God, her French is horrible. So basically, they are just bragging about spending exorbitant amounts of money for little shacks off a rack, modular homes that won't last 20 years that cost $4.2 million a piece to solve the housing problem that they created. And they're bragging about it.
Madam Speaker, in 2022, the Liberals imposed a 35% tariff on Russian fertilizer. By December of that year, Canadian farmers had paid $115 million in tariffs, which the government donated to Ukraine. In the 3 subsequent years, the tariff has remained in place and a further $300 million has been paid to the government by farmers. But the funds are no longer being donated to Ukraine, and because replacements are not available, imports of Russian fertilizer have not gone down. So if the tariff doesn't actually hurt Russian exports or help Ukraine, why is the government still extracting hundreds of millions each year from Canadian farmers?
Hear, hear. L'honorable ministre des Finances.
Madam Speaker, we have stood with Ukraine at every step of the way. Unlike the Conservative, I'd be very careful for them to raise questions like that. I can even tell you, Madam Speaker, as the chair of the G7 finance minister, we always have an item with respect to Ukraine. I was with the finance minister of Ukraine just earlier this week, Madam Speaker, and one thing that the Ukrainian government know, and all Ukrainian, it is Canada will be by their side today, for the future, and as long as it takes, Madam Speaker.
I know. You've spent billions there, nothing for Canadians.
Abruptly announced that they will end door-to-door mail delivery. The elderly, rural, remote, and Indigenous communities will have a hard time accessing their mail. Those who work 9 to 5 will have to take time off work to get their mail. There's a better way forward. Instead of tearing down Canada Post, will the minister build them up? By reintroducing postal banking, building an electric vehicle charging network, expand its infrastructure by creating a community hub of services like high-speed internet, computer access, video conferencing, and e-commerce support. Will the minister do the right thing?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canada Post is in deep financial difficulty, and our government is clear that endless government bailouts are not the answer. We've already stepped in with significant support, but without real reform, the future of this public service.
That's weird, because this government gives endless government bailouts to everyone else.
These changes will put Canada Post on a more stable footing, ensuring that it continues to serve Canadians well.
The honourable member for Saanich Grove Highlands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Earlier this week in Ottawa, I was honored to meet with brave Indigenous women from Guatemala, representing the Xinca people who are fighting a Canadian silver mine at Escobal that's violating their rights. I thought right away, I'll go to the ombudsperson for responsible enterprise to see if they can investigate. They don't have good investigative tools. They don't have teeth in that office. But right now, the office is empty. Can the honourable member for Minister for International Trade inform us when the new ombudsperson will be in place?
The Honourable Minister for International Trade.
Madam Speaker, through you, I'd like to thank the member from Saanich Gulf Islands for that very important question. Our government expects Canadian companies to respect human rights at home and abroad. Our national contact point is part of Canada's commitment to further the effectiveness of OECD guidelines.
Blah, blah, blah. You don't even enforce the laws at home. How are you going to enforce the laws by Canadian companies in other countries? You people are nothing but a kleptocratic government bent on breaking all the rules that you can, and nobody can hold you accountable for anything. And all you do is you do this little show, thinking like you're playing by the rules.
The honourable member. The honourable. York, you want a point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe during the last exchange with my colleague, Mr. Reid, I heard the member from...
Not use names.
I believe I heard the member from Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas accuse my honourable colleague of being a Russian asset. If I was mistaken, I apologize, but if I was correct, I'd invite him to withdraw that comment or say it outside.
The honourable member for Hamilton. Yes, Hamilton. York. Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas.
I believe it was a question, not an accusation. Thank you, Speaker.
Really? That's better.
Well, I take the point of order, and we will look at the collection of notes that have been taken. Daily order of business, tabling of documents.
All right, that's the end of question period. That's a good point of order right there. So basically, that member would have intimated something in him asking that question out loud in Parliament, intimating that another member of Parliament is a traitor. So Well, that's the kind of things that liberals do all the time, right? They will cast aspersions without any proof. They will accuse them of being something or being that or whatever, while the opposition only brings up actual facts, which will then turn around and then dismiss by just bringing up other stuff not related to the question that they are asking. Now we can see that in Parliament now for the last 2 weeks, as people continue to be desperate with their food bill, knowing that as we move forward with these people in charge, only doing everything they can to increase inflation every single day and refusing to do anything other than sticking to their plan, which is very anti-human. They've said so right here. We have a plan to fight climate change, yes, and they have a very anti-human plan that taxes the hell out of everybody to save the planet, which really it doesn't, because where does all that money go? Where does all that money go? It's going somewhere, and we know where it's going. Well, we know where it's not going, right? It's coming out of your pockets and it's reflected in the price of food and all your other goods in the stores because the liberal government is robbing you blind and you are all acting like it's not happening. Well, maybe not the few people actually watching this stream. So let's bring this to an end. Thank you all if you've actually watched this to the end. We've been having some issues on Rumble, quite a few issues actually. I think the last one was my fault this morning. I probably selected the wrong screen selection in Rumble Studio, but it would be nice to know if I could start fixing my thumbnails and not have my videos vanish again in the past. All right. Please give us a like, share, subscribe, and please let your dog outside to pee if they've been bugging you the whole time while you're watching this, because animals are important. You need to take care of them too. God bless you all. We will see you next time. And let's see if we can get this outro going.